Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Power Leader podcast. In our last episode, we sat down with Rex Johnson, a transformational leader, Vice President of Cybersecurity Services at CAI, and a trusted advisor and strategist. He is one of the most powerful voices in the industry for equity and fairness, and a true ambassador for underrepresented communities. Together, we went deep into the architecture of real leadership that does not hide behind slide decks, inflated metrics, or governance theater. We unpacked why psychological safety is the strongest security control, how transparency separates mature organizations from performative ones, and why culture determines whether teams rise or break under pressure. We explored the difference between compliance and commitment, the danger of false confidence created by silence, and the signals that reveal whether an organization is truly ready for transformation. Rex Johnson reminded us that leadership is not about protocol, but it is about integrity, emotional intelligence, and the courage to tell the truth even when it is inconvenient. And as we stepped into the era of AI, we examined how the next generation of cybersecurity leaders will be defined not by technical mastery alone, but by their ability to communicate risk as a business story, build belief, and create cultures where people can speak without fear. Today, we continue that conversation. I have always admired the work you do with those initiatives because it shows that you understand a real mentorship. Many people talk about mentorship and present the mentorship as a tech talk topic or slide deck slogan, as I mentioned earlier. But as action that genuinely lifts underrepresented voices, very few people do that. And one of the reasons I feel so connected to you because, what you represent in terms of equity and community building and the kind of selfless support that reaches people who truly deserves it. So you mentioned about people does not really understand how much strength or how much capability some of the underrepresented individuals can have. For example, you mentioned about the autism. There are people who survive cancers. There are people who survive stroke. One of my best friend is a cancer survivor, but she retired as a vice president in cybersecurity. And I'm not a fan of title anyways, but I'm just mentioning that shows how capable she was. And she was a wonderful human being. And I think industry and we all have to look at things in a different perspective instead of excluding or isolating people who are underrepresented. Understand that there might be some capabilities that you do not have. For example, if people with certain autism disorder, they are so good at certain things, and we have to learn to nourish that and make use of that so they will feel fulfilled, and the industry and the society can benefit from that too. Through Shiro Cyber Technology and the Power Leader podcast, I have committed my own personal time to making small but meaningful changes in people's life. Small things like offering mentorship, coaching, and helping individuals navigate workplace challenges. I mentioned to you about the one of the experience from my mentee. So many people are afraid to speak up because 0.9% of employees rely on this paycheck, and they may don't want to share things because they are afraid of retaliation, things like that. This all have to change, but how much we can do? I'm trying to do as much as I can to change those. I released some of my podcast series. Even friends, that's like she's talking about behavioral patterns at organizations, but I am selflessly contributing to the society because these are the subject people doesn't want to talk about. But what are we going to gain from not talking about it? So I feel like if I talk about this, if somebody is judging me based on what I talk, you do judge. That is not on me, and that is not me, right? It's like I am here to share people's experiences, and if that can change at least some person's life, I am happy. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe life is super short, and be true to yourself, and whatever the way you can help others, even if that is in a way, you talk about unhappy truths about somebody's experiences. You can hear the success stories everywhere, and because people like to listen to that. But how many people have the courage to talk about the unhappy truths? And what are we gaining from not talking about that? So, in a fast paced world, I believe it is important that we slow down enough to understand each other's struggle, recognize the unseen barriers, and step into the gaps that others overlook, and have the courage to talk about it, right? Just like you talk about positive things and success stories, we also have to talk about the negative things and failures, because we learn from every single thing, right? Many people talk about equity, fairness, and mentorship, but very few actually leave it, at least from what I observe. And, you are one of those few. And that is why I truly respect you, Rex. So, for our audience, where do you notice the invisible barriers that others often overlook? And how are you working to break those barriers through initiatives like the Diana initiative?
Well, I appreciate that. There are a lot of barriers out there, and I believe that we need inclusion as a security strategy, and I mean that in the very literal operational sense. If you look at my core team, you got a chance to meet some of the women on my team.
Yes.
About 40% of my core team are women, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't trying to hit a number. That's just the people that showed up.
Sure.
I think one of the things that I might have shared with you is, having these conversations. I've had them for a long time. In 1990, I was a lieutenant going through the Army Ranger School. And this is one of the most grueling training that's out there, because you're tired, you're hungry, because they don't feed you very much. You have sleep deprivation.
Okay.
You're constantly on patrols while you're out in the field. And then you may go from being we take our ranks off, and you may go from just being just one of the troops to now you're in charge of the unit, and you got to now execute the mission the other person just wrote. And that can change. It can very fast. And 1990, as a young man, I said, women should be able to go to Ranger School. That did not go over well with the cadre, did not go over well with my fellow students, but I stood by it. And I just remembered how strong my mom was. She was a very intelligent, capable, confident woman who knew how to stand her ground. And so that was 1990. And in 2015, the first women graduated Ranger School. 25 years later, at that time, I was a lieutenant colonel and a battalion commander. I sent them each an individual email congratulating them on this accomplishment. And I told them, I believed in you in 1990, and you made
Very
it.
nice.
And that was just what was amazing. I am grateful that we broke that barrier. And now we've got other things that we're trying to do to get people in the right jobs. What I might have alluded to earlier is that my command sergeant major during my battalion command was a woman, Lori Schaefer. And she was an amazing woman. And I remember she went up and reprimanded a captain. Now, if you understand the military structure, you have enlisted and officers. Command sergeant major is an enlisted soldier, but they still are outranked by a lieutenant. So this captain told her what to do. Basically, she told me about it. I said, let me take care of it, Sergeant Major. I went and explained to that young man that, first of all, that woman is giving you the courtesy of her experience for you to be a better officer. And when she talks to you, I talk to you. I do not want to hear about you disrespecting her again. And I think when we stand up for the right thing for the right people and give them the context that this was not just, an senior enlisted soldier trying to get under somebody's skin. They were actually trying to help this officer be a better officer, and he didn't see it, but I helped him see it. And I think we've got to do that. WISA's has got a goal to get us from 22% to 50% by 2050. Now, I'm going to be 85 in 2050. I hope I live to see it. Lisa says you probably won't retire, so you'll probably still be working. Maybe I'll get to be at the celebration when that happens.
Thank you, Rex. You are the type of leader that many of the women needs in this industry. It's like amazing how you think, and that is one reason, I felt instantly connected to you within like 2 minutes. Yeah, I wish and hope if there are more leaders like you in the industry. And I think that came from your mother. Everything forms from our family and then society. And yeah, the roots are very, very important, right? Thank you, Rex. That's a lot of information. And I truly appreciate your leadership views on all that. I believe leadership starts with the honoring your word. For me, integrity is the discipline of aligning words with actions. Say what you do and say what you can do and, do what you say. View which commitments belongs in the public domain and how should we hold leaders accountable for real follow-throughs?
I think I'm going to share an example here. And I remember one of the questions you asked me in advance is the time that I felt the most supported, but it kind of ties in here. So we need to hold uh, our leaders accountable to do the right things. And if they can't do that, we need to replace them. An example is at Black Hat, I had to make a very difficult decision. I had hired a new director to be the lead of one of my practices, and I had met them. A lot of people work remotely, but I had flown to meet this person and interview them, and they vetted well and hired them. And I said to him, I said, I want you to come to Black Hat. I want you to meet the rest of my team so that you can gel with them. Well, he came to Black Hat and he showed us who he was. He was a very misogynistic person who did not respect the people on my team, did not respect our business partner. Our
Mm-hmm.
business partner taking us to a very expensive dinner. And he was just terrible and rude. And it was horrible. One of my managers was very scared to come talk to me about it because this was a director level. And
Mm-hmm.
she was encouraged by my team. I'll go talk to Rex. He'll listen to you. And I remember I got an email early. I woke up in that morning. My wife, Lisa, was with me. And I got an email from her. And I said, oh my God, she wants to meet with me in person. She's going to quit. I'm going to lose her. And she goes, no, she's going to talk to you about this guy. I said, really? She goes, oh yeah, she's going to talk to you about this guy. So I didn't realize everything that was going on because we had, hosted a happy hour. We had this dinner, but I went ahead and talked to them and I initiated the termination process. I
Okay.
contacted my boss. I got HR involved. HR
Mm-hmm.
interviewed people. And I just felt so devastated that I brought this person into our culture. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had failed the team.
Yeah.
But I remember my team, especially the women, were very supportive and they felt heard and they felt validated.
Yeah.
And they saw that we were not going to accept that kind of behavior. It had
Mm-hmm.
consequences, didn't belong in our culture. So when I think about those kind of things, that's keeps me in perspective. And the fact that, when I felt like I had failed my team by bringing this person in, the
Mm-hmm.
rest of my team coming to encourage me just was amazing. And I'm so grateful to have these amazing people
Mm-hmm.
that I get to work with.
That is actually very important, right? The more you tolerate the bad behavior, the more you are damaging the organization and the people who are there. So I think, that was one of the important things that any leader should do actually. Rex, I think we are almost out of time. So let me ask a few rapid.
Sure.
Um, can you tell me one leadership book that actually changed you?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Oh, very nice. I have heard about that book a lot. I didn't read it yet. I want to.
I will certainly do that, but that's certainly a powerful book. And what's really interesting about that is that it's still very powerful and it is still very basic things. And I've told my team, anyone who wants to become a leader, read this because it gives you a chance to really listen.
All right. And one habit that keeps you grounded.
I say one of the habits that I have is I have a wonderful woman that I'm married to who helps provide me a perspective.
Very nice.
Lisa, she is a signing director with a major accounting firm, a very accomplished woman herself, but she knows that I advocate for women. And what I like about that relationship is she has a perspective that I don't. She's a woman and she
Mm-hmm.
can let me know because a lot of times men, even when they advocate for women, those intentions could be misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and she will tell me, if you do that, that could come across this way. So you might want to do this instead. And I greatly appreciate that because I never want anyone to feel disrespected in my presence. And she has helped me tremendously.
Wow, that's very nice, Rex. Actually, that is the compensating type of quality, right? Each person, compensating to each other's what they don't have. And that's an amazing unity a man and a woman can have. And if they can appreciate each other and learn from each other, that is wonderful. And I think it's sometimes not only in marriage life, in any relationship, even in friendship, being able to take the compensative quality from the other person and learn from it and change, that is a wonderful habit to have. Thank you for sharing that. That is giving our audience a different perspective, actually. Thank you, Rex. And one mistake leaders should stop making immediately from your point of view.
I think the thing that they need to do is they need to understand, I think when you think about these kind of things is you need to realize the impact that you have. And are you creating
Yeah.
a culture that makes sense? For example, one thing a lot of times leaders want to do is they want to address the person and not the behavior. So if you're familiar with a called Never Split the Difference. Now,
Okay.
Chris is a former, or actually he's a hostage negotiator. He deals with intense situations.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he says, you name the behavior, not the person. So for example, there are times I might see somebody, I remember being at a client site, and this was a woman CIO who had just come in a male dominated group that resented her because they wanted their buddy to get the promotion and not for her to
Mm-hmm.
come in.
Yeah.
And I remember she brought up a very good point in a meeting, and it was silent. And then another guy, one of the team members, said the exact same thing. And everybody said, that's a good idea. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, hold on a second. She said it first. And I think we recognize that. And the thing is, I didn't call the person out for their misogyny, but I did address the behavior. I didn't name call it the person. I addressed the behavior and got back to what was important. And when you do that, people realize it's not personal, or I hope they realize it's not personal, and they realize that they need to make this change. You can help them grow, because there are some people that do come full circle and they get it eventually, and they become very strong advocates, and they realize they weren't before.
One belief you hold that others disagree with.
One belief that I hold that others disagree with is that I think the belief is that you have to be the one seen doing all the good work is a belief. And a lot of people do that because I've seen cultures where are motivated by fear, which is a terrible thing. And I remember at one time being on a project where everybody was throwing everybody under the bus because there was rumors of layoffs and they didn't want to be the person laid off. But it comes down to results more so than it does that. So, for example, one of the things I talked about, this chief of staff who was a bad leader when I was in Kosovo, he came in to my place and noticed we were going to take him out to do an interview. And he noticed some of my soldiers were just sitting back watching DVDs of Friends and not working. And he pulled me aside the next day and said, why are your soldiers slacking off and watching Friends? I said, sir, those soldiers were up till 2 a.m. getting a media piece out.
Sure.
So they need some downtime. He goes, well, I didn't see them work. I said, well, sir, you saw the media product. That's what you need to see. The end result is there. And he just could not get past the paradigm that because he didn't see them working hard, that they weren't working hard. And that was really unfortunate because he missed the opportunity. We did some amazing things in Kosovo. We were there when they declared their independence, and we got some stories, got on CNN, got on a lot of things, and a lot of things happened. So yeah, that's the thing I got to say is that sometimes you got to realize what the results are. And just because you don't see the hard work doesn't mean it's not there.
Thank you, Rex. And one sentence that defines your leadership philosophy?
Basically, hire very good people and get them to the point where they don't need you, but you're there anyway.
If every listener could adopt one leadership discipline tomorrow that would change their career trajectory, what would it be?
One leadership thing that I could say tomorrow to kind of is, I would say, come down to doing the right thing, and no matter what. I mean, there will be consequences when bad things happen. That's okay. The thing is, I'd rather, lose a job or a position because I told the truth and maintain a lie, because that's not something I could live with myself.
Thank you so much, Rex. That is amazing philosophy. And thank you for the depth and the clarity you brought today. Conversation like this don't just inform. I believe they recalibrate. And I know our listeners will feel that for sure. To everyone listening, if this episode challenged you, stretched you, or gave you a new lens, share it with someone who leads. This is the Power Leader Podcast. Signing off, Dia.